Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Energize Your Online Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Okay, guys, you might be shocked by what I'm about to tell you. We are going to discuss live launching. What? What?
But why, Nikki? But why?
Why? It's so off brand. Yes, it is. You guys know that we are not advocates of live launching. However, live launching is very much a prevalent tactic that is taught. And at the same time, too, you have to put your course out there for the first time at least once. Whether you want to call that a launch or whatever you want to say, it has to go out into the world at least once. Also, too, I think the experience for most people is that they have been told to live launch, so they live launch until it fails. And so, what we're going to talk about today is how to assess the problems and how to come back from a failed launch, because there are a lot of business owners who, you do a couple of launches, things are going well, you do the exact same thing to the exact same audience a couple of months later, and it tanks. And understandably, it's very scary for business owners, because if they can't get their live launches to work, and that's the live launch that is their entire income for those 3 months or those 6 months, whatever, it is very scary. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, bad news, friends. Bad news. At some point, you're going to have a launch that tanks, which is why, not just saying, which is why maybe relying on launches isn't the way to go. But whatever you decide to do, we're going to talk about how to bounce back from, or at least how to learn from a failed launch so that you can move on.
Yeah. And even if it is like an okay or a so-so or a not so great launch, but, define failure for yourself. Most of the time I feel like we're thinking you're not hitting the revenue goal that you wanted or anticipated. And so even though if it's okay, again, it doesn't mean you should limit yourself in your business to launches. You can scale further than relying on a launch. And I think the interesting wisdom that you hear a lot too is don't compare your past launches to, your future launch. So how can you predictably grow business if you can't compare it to your last launch? And so I get that in the sense of comparison's the thief of joy, but sure, okay, this one was great and now this one wasn't. That's not helpful advice in terms of moving forward. So I think the baseline here is we know that people might do this anyway, even, will continue to use this tactic.
How are you supposed to build a business if you depend on launches, and every launch you have to treat like it's completely brand new? Yeah, to your point, Kate, how are you supposed to plan ahead? How are you supposed to plan for business? How are you supposed to plan for paying your team members, much less paying yourself? I also wanted to say something about, my live launch hasn't failed, but it's decreased. Be very careful, because that decreasing can compound. I know a lot of business owners who they've come to us not because one launch quote unquote failed, but because they had a launch and that was a little worse than the last one. And the next one was a little worse than the last one. And the next one was a little worse than the last one. And before they know it, they've had several launches that have ultimately really decrease their revenue. And they know that that's not a trend that they can fix through launching.
Yeah. And I think the key to remember with all of this too, first and foremost, is that if the launch failed, or if, to Nikki's point, it's trending in a not so positive direction, that's not your fault. I think it's not that you're not cut out for business. It's not that your offer is terrible. It just means that maybe live launching isn't the way to sell your course. And so I think baseline for all of this and quote unquote failure is that it's not you. Don't take it personally that you did something wrong.
Yeah. If anything, it's an opportunity. Anytime, anything where we don't get the results we wanted, really any results we want, they're an opportunity to learn from. So if you see, and yes, I mean, I'll say it again, you guys know we are, we're not fans of live launching over here, but any feedback that you get from your live launch, even if you have a great live launch, if you have a live launch that disappoints you, any anything that you get from that should be feedback that you can use to improve your offer, improve your business, improve, and we'll get into all of that, of course, in this episode. But the more you can, yes, if you had a disappointment, sure, feel those emotions. Nobody expects you to be a robot, but feel those emotions. And then when you're able to, take a step back and start looking through all of the information that you've gotten in because of that launch.
Yeah. So first and foremost, slowing down. I think one of the things, and we've seen this, I feel like a lot around the holidays. I know we may have mentioned some examples like this on previous podcast episodes, but it becomes very easy if you don't hit your launch goal to then start working from a place of desperation. And I think one of the biggest ways we see this is having a fake deadline. And so you didn't hit your number, you didn't, you wanted to enroll, on 30 purchasers, whatever the number is, whatever your goal was, and you didn't hit that. I think we see this like, we still have 5 spots left, like last chance to get in on these last 5 spots, or
you asked, so we're extending the deadline. Like, no. Yeah, and I have been in years past, I've been in groups with business owners, and I've been on the other side of these are the emails of that our people are receiving, but on the other side, that business owner is going, oh my gosh, I didn't hit my numbers. What am I going to do? Do I reopen it? Do I relaunch, but a different offer? And do I offer them do I offer them the same for, but for so much less, or do I offer it to them without the coaching calls? And that's exactly what Kate is saying. It's this, like, you didn't hit your numbers, and so you start to spiral and you start to get desperate, which is understandable when you are effectively gambling your income on one launch within 3 months or 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, and that slowing down is so important, because the desperation, the working from a place of desperation, really has the potential to hurt more than it helps. If you, again, using we're extending the deadline, or we still have X spots, or whatever it is, which would involve extending the deadline, essentially, your audience is learning not to trust what you're saying. And so that can have more damage in the long run than, maybe would extending the deadline allow you to hit your number? Potentially. But what damage is that doing in the long run if you're going to launch next time? And now you have a whole bunch of people who know, well, I don't have to show up and purchase when they open the launch, because they're just going to extend it, and there's no reality to this deadline.
Yeah. And when you're creating new offers in that desperation, I've seen a lot of people undercut their core offer. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna reoffer it, but I'm gonna offer it without the coaching calls, and so it's gonna be so much cheaper. And obviously, depending on the price point, that can make it look like the coaching calls are either overpriced, or it can make look like the coaching calls aren't necessary, or when you make changes to your pricing on a moment's notice because you're desperate, or because it can really undercut what you've been saying about your program. About, if you're going through and saying, oh yeah, the coaching calls are so essential and they're the best part of the program, and that, and then you say, all right, but you can buy it for X amount and without any coaching calls, it undermines the core elements of your business. And you might not be literally saying you're desperate, but the feeling your audience is going to get is you're trying to sell from desperation. Yeah. And nobody wants to work with someone who's desperate. So
I think once you've slowed down and had the chance to, not work from the place of desperation, one of the first things, and we do this, again, obviously on a circuit with people that don't purchase from us, to send out a survey and get information and feedback on why they didn't purchase. But you can do the same thing with a live launch afterwards, to send out a survey to get feedback from people, to see why they didn't purchase. You can set up calls with these customers too, to give them an incentive for showing up for that call, but talk with them, and obviously taking answers, with a grain of salt. If you have 50 people and they're all saying the same thing, okay, maybe there's some truth there. And obviously, if there's an opinion of one, it could still be valid and it could really resonate with you. But knowing that, okay, only one person out of however many said this, I'm not going to weigh that as highly necessarily.
Yeah. And dig deeper too, because you will get, most people will say, oh, I just couldn't afford it. That is what most people will say to anything. It could be $20 and they would still say, well, I just couldn't afford it. And the fact is that in general, if we want something badly enough, we'll find a way to pay for it. So a little insider secret is that when you're talking to people, ask them, okay, aside from money, why else wouldn't you have purchased it? right? So you're not saying, aside from money, would you have purchased it? Like, of course they would. Of course, like if money weren't an object, I would be in Bali right now. But money is an object. So saying aside from the cost, why else wouldn't you have purchased it? Make them give you another reason for why they wouldn't have purchased, because that's going to be your key information, is something that was missing that might have gotten them to take action.
And these answers can reveal, whether your audience expected something different maybe, or wanted something more, or maybe there was a key component that they were like, well, your offer didn't have this, and so that's why I didn't purchase. And maybe you did have it and you just didn't message it appropriately. And so it might pinpoint holes in your messaging or opportunities to repeat core messages in more places so that people have that information and then are, going to purchase. Or maybe you need to create something to fill a gap that people identified in your offer. It could be a whole host of things that you might be revealed by these answers.
Don't forget too that it might be your audience. Say for example, you got on a summit with somebody and you got a whole big influx of subscribers, but those subscribers were not actually within your target audience. Maybe they want something different, or they're a different kind of person than your message speaks to. You might send all of these people through your launch, but because they're not the right person for your offer, they're not going to purchase. And that's something that you can find out by talking to people. It's not just if you have the best offer in the world, but you're trying to give it to you're putting it in front of people who just fundamentally aren't interested in that kind of offer, they're not going to purchase. But also by that same token, if you know who your target audience is and you're trying to give them something that they don't want to buy, it's also not going to work. And sometimes we can have big launches because we got lucky. Honestly, sometimes that happens with launches. You have a big launch and just the economy is good. Everybody's feeling excited. Everybody feels flush with cash. And so they feel great. And maybe it's not perfect for them, but they purchase it. And then everything comes back down to reality. And you have a launch and the same audience is going, I don't really want that. And, we talk a lot about how important your messaging is. So yes, you have to get your messaging right. But also if your offer is not something that your audience wants, you can't force them to want it. And I think that's a mistake. I see a lot of business owners, they want to sell what they want to sell, not what their audience wants to buy. And unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Yeah. And I think the other part of the audience too is, was it a big enough audience? If you needed, maybe you had 50 people as part of your live launch, and to hit your revenue goals, you needed 25 of them to purchase. So a 50% conversion rate, which is just, unrealistic really. So were there enough people that were even had eyes on this offer? And to Nicki's point of knowing who you're targeting the right audience, doing customer research, which is a big part of the circuit sales system. And I think it's fascinating that business owners in the circuit are always like, well, I know my audience, and they end up doing the customer research as part of building their circuit, and are often shocked that it's slightly different, or they're talking about it in a different way than the business owners expected. I think, and we've mentioned this too, I think on previous episodes, but I think it bears repeating of, business owners, you were once your target audience, but now you're no longer your target audience. And so I think that's one of the mistakes we see a lot, is that people are messaging toward their former selves and what they think, previous version of them needed. But things have changed, and yes, their offer is still very much needed by that audience, but the way that audience is talking about that transformation is different.
Well, and you can do customer research calls, but if you're asking them the wrong questions, you're going to get the wrong data. Even sometimes if you're asking them questions in the wrong way. Years ago, actually, for a company, Kate, you and I both, I don't know if you were there when I was doing this, but I took on some of their usability studies because, all right, why not? I'll give this a shot. And it's just fascinating to see how much you can lead people without meaning to do so. And you can do that when you ask them a question too. If you ask them a question in the wrong way, they're going to give you the wrong kind of answer, and they're going to give you the answer that they think you want to hear instead of giving the real answer. And so if you have done market research calls in the past, but you don't have a system for doing them, and you're not trained on how to do them, there's a very good chance that you have done market research. I'm sure certainly some of it will be useful, but there's a decent chance that some of the information you got back is not useful. They're telling you what they think you want to hear because they want to please you, and which makes sense. But if you're then basing your messaging and your offer off of that, you're going to have a big problem down the line.
Mm-hmm. And I know we've mentioned messaging in various capacities throughout this, but I think it bears talking about messaging specifically in terms of the people, especially the people that didn't purchase. As we talked about, they'll say price might be the first reason that they didn't purchase. But if that is what a lot of people are saying, that hints to the fact that maybe you didn't communicate the value effectively. So if people see the value, they will purchase, as Nicki said. That's price it as long as they know what transformation they're getting, what the real value of your program is, they will make the purchase. And so knowing that, if people are saying that, okay, how can I revisit my messaging so that I'm communicating its value or the value of my offer a lot stronger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, make them want it. Like we were saying, we will purchase so many things that we want it, and we don't even think about the price. It could be something stupid expensive. I think we use college a lot. College is
the iPhone with its glass
and the
screen.
iPhone, exactly. And college can be a six-figure investment potentially, and there's not even a guarantee of an outcome. But the perception is, well, you have to get your kids into college. I mean, it's changing a little bit, but you have to get your kids into college. You have to do that, and so people just go, all right, I'm going to take out loans. I'm going to make this happen somehow because they want it badly enough. And you have to evaluate your messaging to make sure that your messaging conveys to people why they should want your offer, because your transformation is so powerful. We see a lot of that as being a big mistake of assuming that people are going to figure out why their program is so great, or figure out what the transformation is going to be. Or if I just lay out all of the modules, they're going to be like, wow, there's so many modules. I want to buy this. Nobody wants to buy a module. Nobody wants to buy a video. Nobody wants to buy a coaching call. They want to buy the end result. They want to buy the transformation on the other side.
Yeah. And understanding too, why you versus any of your competitors, and making that very, very clear. If they don't understand why your offer is better than another one, then there's no incentive to purchase yours over another's.
Exactly. And we talked about this a little bit, but the concept of a deadline. First of all, you have to have a deadline, because we still see, I still see this sometimes with launches too, where people go, I launched, and how long? Okay, how long until your cart closes? Oh, I'm just going to just let people buy until there's no, you have to give people a deadline. You always, always, always have to give them, and it has to be a real deadline. The number of times that I have, that I've clicked on there's a timer countdown and it's great, but the timer countdown, I refresh the page and the timer starts again. Yeah, guess what? Now I know I'm not on your timeline. I'm on my timeline. And if I'm going to buy it, which maybe I won't now because there's less urgency, it's whenever I want. As long as that tab is open, I can still purchase. In fact, there are things right now that I have tabs open, and it's not, actually, take that back, not even the tabs open. I have the URL. And because I have the URL, I can come back to it at any time, even though, this program closed down, So I didn't have to purchase on their timeline. And that can absolutely happen if you don't have a real and valid deadline. On top of the fact, too, that when you don't have a valid deadline, as Kate was saying earlier, you are training people that you are not in integrity, that you say things, but they can't believe you. And that is not a good way to establish a relationship with your target audience.
Yeah. And as part of this, talking about failure and knowing, what even is failure, I think that starts with knowing your numbers and knowing how many people you actually need to purchase. What is the conversion rate you're expecting, and is that realistic? I know we mentioned the example of, you need 50 people to purchase and you have 100 people on your list or whatever it is, having a 50% conversion rate isn't actually realistic. But even I think knowing how many people realistically are going to show up, you have this many that sign up for, your launch, whatever you're doing, how many are actually going to show up? And if you do a multi-day situation, knowing the drop off each day. And so again, It's hard because you can't base it on your past numbers. You might be using those numbers as a benchmark or a baseline or whatnot, but you need to have some idea of what needs to happen to hit your goal.
Exactly. How many, assuming you have your average, the average baseline conversion rate is 1% to 2%. Now, I don't want to brag. We see higher in the circuit sales system, but your average baseline conversion is 1% to 2%. So you need, if you want 1 to 2 people to purchase your offer, you need 100 people to see your offer, not just 100 people to opt in for your launch, not 100 people to sign up for your live event. It has to be, and if you present at the end of your live event, it has to be 100 people still there when you present it to get to that. So yeah, you have to be realistic about those numbers.
And then, of course, we have to say this because, we wouldn't be on brand if we didn't talk about needing a plan for an automated system, regardless of if you are going to continue launching. Maybe you like launches. We'll link to the episode with circuit sales system business owner Karina, who still combines her circuit with live launches. But either way, you need an automated system to get predictable income. It needs to be something you're moving towards, whether you plan to continue doing live launching or not.
Yeah. Look, it's your business, right? And if you say, no, I'm going to keep doing live launching, I'm going to launch twice a year. Okay, fine. But it's your business. You would benefit from understanding what you are doing is you are gambling your income for 6 months on a 1-week window. And there's no other business, no other industry in the world that does that. And that has to be some kind of flag that that's not a good idea. So just take that for what you will. Our goal with this whole episode was to give you some things to work on. Again, if you want to take it and work on it for your next live launch, great, awesome, your business, you choose. But these are things that will benefit your business no matter what, whether you live launch, whether you decide you want to more consistent income, whether you join us in CSS. If you do, great, we'll love to have you. If you don't, no problem, your business. But these are all fundamental business elements that you need to consider to improve your sales no matter what. Yeah. So I think we've left you with a decent amount of homework, but that's okay, right? Nobody ever said business was going to be easy. However, it can be fun and it should be fulfilling and profitable. So there's that. Okay. So with that, we will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do you want to learn how to sell and scale your offer on autopilot every single day without the chaos of live launching or the low conversions of Evergreen? Who doesn't, right? Get our free on-demand video training at circuitsalessystem.com/free. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel to make sure you never miss a video. We'll catch you next time.